Okay, so not last spring, but the spring of 2016, I got a Google alert for my hometown in Maine. And that kicked off a very intense summer, which didn't end until I finished this poem on November 4th. This is what happens when dreams don't come true, when the world is flung and flipped off its keel, and the oars are lost to the current, and the water's too pinprickly to swim, and no one can hear you scream because they too have become so disenchanted that they've cut themselves off, deafening themselves, protecting themselves from the real world. And they go on long enough until they forget how to be human. This was true when I was growing up, but I was young enough and naive enough to believe that things would change, to believe that my buying power would improve, and that would make all the difference. I hadn't read The Great Gatsby at that point. It seemed obvious that things would get better. That's what all these Hollywood stories told us, and I bought into it. Now, people are just a little bit older and a little bit colder, still writing off others like they always have, and lack the integrity to communicate even when it's the right thing to do. Like maybe reach out when something really big happens, like when Dana gasses up his low expectations and steams full throttle, bow pointed toward the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and he pushes forward until the gas tank's dry, at which point he puts a bullet through his skull, and the Canadian Mounties find him less than a week later, drifting 12 miles off the coast of Nova Scotia. Maybe that's something I shouldn't have to find out about through a fucking Google alert 10 months later. Maybe those are details I shouldn't have to learn by filing a Freedom of Information request with the Cumberland County Sheriff because everyone is too spineless and thoughtless to talk about it. Suicide is a dirty word when you're living in paradise. Out of sight, out of mind is the status quo. This is what happens when dreams don't come true. Your child drops dead because his dentist forgets to sterilize the inside of his mouth before pulling a wisdom tooth. Accidents happen in the Western world, even when we think we've got it licked. But the people you love will go away, and you'll watch their life fade from their blackened bodies beat to shit because they didn't take care of themselves in their younger years. And you regret ever loving them to begin with, or ever connecting with them at all. And to stay sane, you have to cut yourself off from everyone and everything that reminds you of them. Every restaurant, museum, film that makes your heart ache and your eyes well up. The moment they're gone, you know your life will never be the same. Because you have lost someone who kept that spark lit, who kept that life in balance, and on that desperately needed even keel. And so I try to communicate and create and explain that creation makes all this shit bearable, and that it shouldn't be always about the money. But my song is lost to the noise. I'm screaming into deaf ears. The deaf ears of those who will never read my books, never watch my films, never ask why I keep a penny minted in 1987 on my home desk and my work desk. The deaf ears of those lost in their own lives, in happiness and misery. The ears of a crush from yesteryear who posts a picture of her newborn baby and you realize Mother Nature's a fucking bitch. The ears of everyone who thinks me a traitor for moving to New York with a vision for my future, with the idea of living in all these grand neighborhoods with their stores, restaurants high above the Central Park pine oaks, only to wind up in a studio right around the corner from where Eric Garner got choked. But somehow the city still got me hooked. Brick and mortar has never looked as good as it does in New York. But that's not to say there isn't a downside to this thing, or that there isn't always a feeling of safety some evenings. Not physical safety, that getting jacked sort of safety, but knowing your local bodega won't try to take advantage of you if they sense you're a little out of it, off your game. But it's still better than that other thing, living among everyone else back home who are dealing with the reality that their dreams haven't come true, refusing to realize that if we work together, all our dreams could come true, but we're all too selfish and deaf to give a fuck anymore. Not just about others, but about ourselves too. So we stop being sensible, open-minded, and ripe with vision. Instead, we vote like we drive, casting ballots with emotion and anger, oblivious to the consequences. We elect for misery because that's what we always do.